whichever.
Spencer, are you starting?
I will be, yes.
Did you lose someone?
The Premier. Yes, yeah, we're not going to get started without him. No, I'll be going first, and then we'll go to the Premier, and then we'll go to the Minister.
Just as it should be.
Mm-hmm. Over here.
There's the X.
We're all good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here, of course, mostly online or virtually. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, for having us here on their traditional territories. I'm Spencer Chandra Herbert, the MLA for Vancouver West End, Premier's advisor on rental housing. I want to thank everybody. Obviously, it's been a long couple of weeks, a challenging couple of weeks. The patience, the compassion, the care you're showing for your community, for each other, for everyone, is really noted and appreciated. It's a challenging time, no question. And one of the challenges people have been raising with me and with all of us more so than most issues has been housing and fear of losing their housing because of COVID-19. We've been clear that no one will lose their housing because of COVID-19. Today's announcement will meet that commitment. We believe we need to do more than meet that commitment. We also believe we need to provide relief for renters, for rental housing providers. The stress is off the charts right now. We need to give people security and safety in their rental housing. Early last week, the Premier asked me to lead a rapid-fire consultation, as comprehensive as I could do it, as quickly as I could do it, because the need is so great, on what we needed to do to support renters and rental housing providers now in the time of this public health emergency. I want to thank everyone, renters, rental housing providers, your associations, everyone who's emailed me, who's contacted, phoned me. We had great conversations with so many, and I want to thank the advocates who are doing so much to protect renters and rental housing providers at this time. The need is great. Your work is really appreciated by the community today. The measures we announced today, in addition to the federal announcement and our earlier announcement on Monday of support, will help people stay safe in their homes, protected, knowing that there can be a better future. It's rough right now, but it will get better. And I want to thank you for doing everything you can to look out for your community. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our Premier, Premier John Horgan, to help share what we are announcing today. Thank you, Mr. Premier.
Great, Spencer. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the work that you did in very short order. Spencer, of course, chaired a rental task force last year, did some good work that allowed us to put in place policies and programs to protect renters before the advent of COVID-19. So I was grateful that Spencer was able to reactivate his contact list and connect with people to get a direct sounding from them, whether they be providers of rental housing or renters themselves. And I think we've taken that information and, working with Minister Robinson, put together a fairly comprehensive package, adding on to the work that we've already done with our COVID-19 action plan announced earlier this week. I think it was on Monday. I too want to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and again reiterate that the challenges we have when it comes to addressing the pandemic, the challenges we have about keeping people safe, about making sure that we can continue to have economic activity, and most importantly, that people don't feel the most critical place for them now, as Dr. Henry has said, stay home. We don't want people to think they may lose that home as a result of this pandemic. And I've had, just this week, 17,000 emails across British Columbia, and that speaks to the anxiety and the stress that people are feeling about these issues. And it was important for us to get the mix right and to ensure that it fit into a more comprehensive plan, working with the federal government and our municipal partners to ensure that we were doing everything we could to keep people safe, doing everything we could to make sure that if they were sick or self-isolating, if they'd had their hours cut back or that they were laid off, that they would not be fearful of losing their home. And so I want to also say to landlords, to those who are providing rental housing, that we want to make sure we continue to work with you, because those rent checks are critical to your families as well, critical to you making your payments also. But home should be a place of comfort and security, and we've worked tirelessly, Minister Robinson and Spencer, Chandra Herbert, to make sure that we get that balance right. So this morning, Cabinet met and approved a package, and I'll outline some of those elements today, but it's designed to give immediate protection to renters and to landlords. First, we'll be providing a $500 a month package to help renters up to $500 a month, to make sure that they can continue to stay in place and that landlords can continue to see some revenue coming in. That will be delivered through BC Housing. Selena will go into some of the details, but we use BC Housing because it's the best way to deliver this program. They're already working on other programs like SAFER, like the renters program that we already have in place. This supplemental renters rebate will be there to help people. This supplemental check will be there to help people get through the coming months. And we want to make sure that, that we do this in a way that makes the most impact for the greatest number of people. I want to reiterate, if you can pay your rent, you should pay your rent. This fund is there to help those people who are in genuine distress. The fewer people who access the program, the more opportunity we have to expand it going forward. The other issue, of course, that's of primary concern to people is the prospect of an eviction during this stressful time. And I'm here to say that while the emergency order is in place here in British Columbia, BC is suspending current and future evictions until this crisis has passed. There will be some exceptions, of course, but by and large, if you're at home, you're a good landlord, you're a good tenant, you will be able to continue that relationship well into the future. That's the commitment we've made as a government. That's what we are announcing here today. $500 a month for the next 4 months, available for rent, a moratorium on evictions, and a rent freeze is the third portion that I want to talk about. This is not the time to seek rent increases, and there is just zero chance of that happening. I think those who provide rental stock understand that, and I want those that are concerned about how they're going to make it to through April, through May, and through June, I want them to be absolutely, absolutely certain that the government is here to help you. We have programs in place. It's not just the renters piece we're providing today, but we're topping up the federal resources when it comes to those who are going to be going on to income assistance through employment insurance. $1,000 from the province, $2,000 announced today by the federal government. We're waiving the payment of student loans until September. So again, those who are looking at where are we going to find enough money to keep going, we're going to add a whole host of modest programs to make the whole package work for everybody. And lastly, before I turn the microphone over to Minister Robinson for some more detailed assessment of the package that we put forward, because there are a couple of other elements, I want to just say a word about those who are concerned about their mortgages. I've been hearing, regrettably, I've been hearing that some banks and some financial institutions are not as enthusiastic about living up to the challenge that we have in front of us. And so I'm calling on banks and financial institutions to work with mortgage holders to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get through this difficult time. All of us working together is the only way forward. We've seen extraordinary cooperation in British Columbia over the past number of weeks. We need to redouble those efforts going forward. We need to make sure that we're doing our part by listening to Dr. Henry and ensuring that we are self-isolating if we're not feeling well. We're exercising distances that are appropriate at this difficult time. And also, again, most importantly, continue to keep your hands clean. Continue to work with your neighbors to make sure that they've got everything that they need. Working together, we're going to get through this. No one's going to lose their home. We're going to put some resources into the pockets of people so we can keep the economy going. I think we're on the right track. I know with everyone's support working together, we'll get through this. And with that, I'm going to invite Minister Robinson to step up and fill in some of the details on the program that we announced today at Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Premier, and I too would like to acknowledge that we're on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people. Well, we all know that the next few months are going to be difficult. That's been clear for some time. And we need to remember to keep doing everything that we can to support each other. Because frankly, that's the only way that we are going to get through this. And it's why we have been working hard to develop supports for people who are suffering job loss and other difficulties as a result of COVID-19. And it's important to remember really what this is about. It's about the people that we love. It's about our families, it's about our neighbors, it's about our friends, it's about our colleagues. It is about our communities. And this is an unprecedented challenge. And it will require every single one of us doing our part. It will require all of us to come together as a society to protect each other. So this past weekend, I talked about some first steps that we are taking to help people who don't have homes right now. And on that front, there is much more to do, and there's more to come. And as we do this work, it is critical to make sure that people in British Columbia are not made homeless because of COVID-19. At a time when we are asking people to stay home to prevent the spread of this virus, we have to make sure that people can keep their homes. The Premier mentioned measures to protect people's health, such as new powers for landlords to restrict. One of the things that we're doing with these new powers is to restrict the use of common areas and to stop visitors coming to the building. So landlords will be able to do that to help keep everyone safe. We've all heard Dr. Henry and Minister Dix outline what it's going to take to slow down this virus so that our healthcare system can keep up. So we have to keep distance from each other to keep the virus from spreading. That means that we shouldn't have visitors over. We have to minimize the number of people touching shared surfaces and running into each other. So this new rule will let landlords restrict access to common areas. For example, restricting how many people can be in a shared laundry room at once, or close down shared spaces like game rooms or other social spaces that might exist in a multi-purpose building. This is to protect the health and safety of everyone in these buildings and beyond. On that same note, we are also restricting the right of landlords to enter people's homes unless there is a clear threat to people or to property. Tenants have to be able to protect themselves and others from the virus. Keeping people out of their homes is part of maintaining the distance that we all need so that we can all be safe from COVID-19. We are also halting the enforcement of existing eviction notices issued by the residential tenancy branch, except in extreme cases where there are safety concerns. And there are a small number of court-ordered evictions that are up to the courts, which operate independently of government. I do understand that the courts are aware of this issue, and I will allow the courts to speak for themselves. We are pairing all of these actions to stop evictions with rental supports that will support landlords so that they too can stay afloat and meet their needs and the needs of their families. The new rental assistance program will be available to low and moderate income individuals who have experienced a significant reduction in their income because of COVID-19. And we're going to ask that tenants and landlords that you talk to each other about how to pay rent as you would in a normal course of your exchange and in your relationship, if you can. The supplement that we're proposing with this new program is to help address any shortfall. Because many landlords, especially families with secondary suites, they too depend on rental income to pay their bills. And through all of this, we are making changes so that people can continue to access the services that they count on at the residential tenancy branch. As a government, we are here for tenants and we are here for landlords. We know this is a scary time. And it is made harder because we can only offer comfort from a distance. But we are going to get through this. We have to talk to each other, we have to support each other, and we have to recognize how hard it is on all of us. But the more compassion, the more kindness that we can show each other as we go through this together, the stronger we'll be when we get to the other side. Thank you. Are there any questions?
We're going to take some questions now. A reminder to those on the phone, which is most of you, please press *1 to get in the lineup for a question. And also please unmute your phone. You won't be heard until we call your name to start speaking. We're going to start with a question from Justine Hunter.
Hi, thanks. I'm wondering if you can give us an idea of how many renters you believe will be eligible for this assistance, and how quickly they would see those checks distributed.
Yeah, well, there's about 500,000 renters, households in British Columbia, and we are assuming 100% pickup and then working back from there. As I said, this is an opportunity for people to continue to meet their obligations if they can, and this program, the Temporary Renter Supplement, is designed to help those people who've seen a drop-off in their hours or, in fact, a layoff notice come their way. So that will depend on the depth of the pandemic and the time it will take for us to recover and come out the other side. But finance officials have been working on this around the clock, and I have to lift my hands to public sector employees who are working around the clock to make sure that we're putting in place programs that can get dollars into people's pockets as quickly as possible. And this is unprecedented times for all of us, of course, but when we're dealing with people who have had their lives turned upside down by COVID-19, we want to make sure we're getting the money to them as they need it. So again, I appeal to those who have perhaps savings accrued over the past number of years. If they can continue to keep themselves going in the short term, please do so that we can make sure we target these resources where they're most needed.
Next question is going to be Kat Slepian, Black Press.
Hi there. Just wondering how it is, we've had a lot of questions from renters, from people in general, how they're supposed to access all this government aid that's coming out. So how can people apply for this $500 rental package if they need it?
Putting together a pretty simple application process through BC Housing. We are basing all of this on the accelerated employment insurance program that the federal government announced last week and added to today, I believe, so that demonstration of lost income by a layoff notice or some other demonstration that your financial circumstances have changed is going to be sufficient to access the program. Now, having said that, scribbling something on the back of an envelope and saying, this has happened to me is not going to be appropriate, but there are forms that are being filled out at the federal level that will provide evidence to us that we can add to those programs going forward. But again, it depends on everyone doing everything that they can to focus on getting these dollars to the people who need them most. And those are people who have lost their jobs and are uncertain when those jobs will return. So simple demonstration to BC Housing with this program, as it will be with the top-up that we're providing to employment insurance is the way forward. And they'll be having access to information on the website for BC Housing and other ways for public service announcements to be made as we go forward with the program. They're under development. That's Selena's answer. But they will be traditional mechanisms that governments use to provide opportunities for people to access resources. Keep in mind that we've had two of the worst fire seasons ever over the past 3 years, and that put us in a place with Emergency Preparedness BC or Emergency Management BC to find out how we can take the kinks out of what had been a paper-based system and move it into the web-based system that we all depend on and actually function in today. So we're going to do everything we can to make it as accessible as possible, but it is a work in progress, without any doubt.
Next, we have Richard Zisman.
Premier, as you know, $500 in rent does not go a long way in most places in British Columbia. So what do you suggest to people who have lost all of their income and need to cover the rest of the gap between the $500 and what they're going to owe on April 1st? And is there a guarantee that this money will be in their pockets by April 1st?
We can't guarantee it'll be in their pockets by April 1st, and that's why we're working, and Spencer's work was so critical in this respect. He had already developed relationships with tenant associations and organizations, as well as Landlord BC and other landlords across the province. So we want everyone to work together on this. As Selena said, you have a relationship with your landlord. Let's all hope that they're good relationships, and you're going to have to find a way to work this out together. We are going to get the resources into people's hands as quickly as possible, and I do also recognize that $500 does not seem like an enormous amount, but when you put it beside a $2,000 payment from the federal government and $1,000 from the province, as well as the other initiatives that we've brought forward to reduce costs for people over the past 2 years, I think we're in a place where we can manage this going forward. But again, people need to be able to work together, and we're calling on landlords and tenants to have that sense of cooperation, as in, let's figure this out with each other, household by household, right across the province. That's the only way we can come through this, and to have higher expectations than that, I think, misses the whole point of having an everybody on board approach to addressing this crisis that we're in. Why we've been successful as British Columbians to this point in time is because people get it. They understand that we need to work together. Across government, that's happening. Across community, that's happening. We need it to happen across the province.
Next, we have Rob Buffum.
Oh, hi, Premier. My question is sort of similar to Richard's in the sense that I spoke to the BC Landlord Association earlier today, and they expressed deep concern that there wouldn't be sufficient measures to protect landlords at this point. What do you say to landlords who are thinking, geez, a lot of my tenants are not going to be able to make ends meet, and having a mortgage payment deferred doesn't get them off the hook. In fact, there's likely to be compound interest. So they're concerned that, you know, they're going to be really in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I might get Spencer to answer that, but before I do, I want to just reinforce that financial institutions have to recognize that they're a key part of this solution as well. And the federal government has talked about ways to backstop mortgages. We need to make sure that those landlords that depend on the rent payment to address their financial obligations are also protected by this. And that was one of the fundamental parts of Spencer's initiative, but it depends on financial institutions doing what they need to do to protect those who own the homes and those who rent them.
Thank you. I think really what's clear, and I heard from landlords and renters too, is that they want to work and find a way to get through this together. I've heard many examples where landlords have told their tenants, I'm going to use your damage deposit to pay this month's rent. Don't worry about it. I'm trying to find a way to help you get through this. I've heard from landlords who've said, definitely no rent increases this year. In fact, if I can, I will give my tenants a rent reduction. But what we wanted to do and what this work is about is ensuring that tenants right now in this time of crisis can stay in place if they can pay their rent or if they can't pay their rent, because we know it's going to take a while to get the money to them in this time, including the federal funds. And that's why we put a moratorium on evictions, and that's why we're asking everybody to try and find a way through this together. Listen to each other. Landlords, please look to the needs of your tenants, as I know you and most landlords do. And tenants, please try and find a way to work with your landlords, giving them the notice, giving them the sense as well, because they too need to pay their bills. So we're trying to work with all sides to get through this together, and that's of course the only way that we achieve success.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda.
A quick question. What do people do if there is a massive disagreement, if they can't come to terms and either someone wants to evict someone or renters are saying, I'm not paying?
Residential tenancy branch will still be in operation. Of course, we're changing some of the processes to make sure that people can access the services while safe in a socially distant sort of way. And I think clearly if there was a case of damage, somebody is harming the life of the landlord or fellow residents in the building, action will have to be taken. And we wanted to make sure that in those circumstances, action can happen. But if it's simply a case of a disagreement, you don't like the smell of your neighbor or whatever, people need to get a way to work together, have to be more understanding, and we see it in communities. We're doing our best to be more understanding, to give each other the space we need. We will get through this, but we really will need patience and understanding.
Mary Griffin?
Just wondering if there's a figure for, it's $500 a month for 4 months. The Premier said close to 100% take-up. How much is the estimate?
Sorry, if I might clarify. I think it's up to $500 a month, and the Premier said we have to assume that everybody's going to need it, but we know not everybody's going to need it. You know, plan for the worst, hope for the best. I think there are certainly a number of renters I spoke to who said they're concerned about their neighbors, but they're doing okay themselves, and they're not concerned about their own ability to look after their housing, but they wanted action for, you know, the senior down the block, the fellow who lost his job, the person who lost their hours, and so those are the ones that we're looking to. So,
And it's 3 months.
and it's for 3 months.
I might add a bit to that.
Please.
Yeah, Mary, this is part of the $2.8 billion package that Minister James and I announced on Monday. It will be coming out of what we call the Critical Services and Supports envelope. Within that $5 billion, $2.8 billion was directly focused at people, and within that is this critical supports and services budget of money. And again, I've been pretty clear on this, as has Minister James. This is a start. We have never been on this road before. Tomorrow will be another day that we've never experienced before. And so as these things start to pile up, we need to have a methodical plan going forward. And to have the experience of Spencer Chandler Herbert brought to this issue in such a short time, had we not done that work, had he not done the work across the province, working with, I have to say, Adam Olsen from the Green Party caucus, if the two of them had not worked tirelessly to build relationships, we would be well behind where we are today. This is a start. There's much more to do, but we have to take these days as they arrive. Putting $5 billion provincial resources in play to help landlords, to help tenants, to help people is what we're all about. And there will be areas where we're going to have to up our game in the days ahead, and we're prepared for that. But I think that the public does have, I think, an understanding of this being uncharted territory, and that the best way forward is that charitable approach that I'm seeing in so many parts of public life today. As you know, people are self-isolating, people are physical distancing, but they're also connecting in a way that they never have before. We're having a family gathering via FaceTime today. I have a son in England. I have a son now isolated in Souk, which seems 1,000 miles away to my spouse, but it's just around the corner. We all have to find ways to get through this. And the extraordinary thing is that people are doing that. And when it comes to financial issues, when you're going check to check and those checks stop coming, that's when government has to step up. This is a first step, and there'll be more steps to come.
Next question is Binder Sajan.
Hi, just one point of clarification and then a question. The rent freeze, does that take effect March 1st or April 1st?
April 1st. April 1st.
April 1st, okay. And the question that I have is, you've said that it's really up to banks to do what they can to help people with their mortgages, whether that's deferrals or not. Is there a point where the BC government would be willing to step in and provide something similar to a rental supplement for a short period of time to homeowners who are saying, hey, listen, if my renters can't pay, then I don't know how I'm going to meet my mortgage?
Well, we're gonna look at that after the first month, see how it goes, and make adjustments going forward. Every game plan needs to be flexible. You need to be able to prepare, as I said, and prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so we're looking at what will the consequences be if there's 100% pickup on this. Similarly, I think the federal government, in my conversations with the Prime Minister and other premiers across the country, is that we're all trying to find a way to make sure people do the right thing. And I appeal to financial institutions to take a second look at people's financial situation and their ability to meet their mortgage obligations and find a way to defer those costs. This is an extraordinary time, and no one knows that more than financial institutions as they look at crushing transformations in stock markets and trade routes and a whole host of other issues. They have to be the backbone of our way forward, and they need to be working with their customers, many of who have been customers for a long, long time. This is when people have to step up, and I'm calling on banks and credit unions to do that.
Next question is Rob Monroe.
Hi, I just want to clarify that this program is done through the federal government, and the application process isn't until April, and the news release that you just put out with this says that these payments will go directly to the landlords, not the individuals. That seems a fairly cumbersome program that won't start for at least another week or so. Any idea how soon the landlords are going to get this money?
Well, it's a provincial program, and we're using the employment insurance program as the validation for the loss of income, if that helps explain how the two orders of government are working together on making sure we get dollars into people's pockets. We deliberately waited for the federal package to be put in place with the complete cooperation of the federal finance minister and the provincial finance minister so that we could find places to fill gaps. And that's what we've done with this program. I think Selena can talk about how BC Housing will operationalize the decisions that were approved by Cabinet today. But it will take time, no question, but we want it to be as little time as possible, and the best way to do that is to get started.
Because I have the mover of the microphones. BC Housing is best poised because they already administer SAFER and RAP, existing rent supplemental programs that have existed for quite a long time in this province. And so we're using their expertise to create this new temporary program for the next few months, next 3 months, and it just got ratified by Cabinet, and we still has to go through some more process. But they're already working on developing the application program. We're hoping to have it available in short order, and we'll be sure to let everybody know as soon as it's up and running how they can access it, the kind of materials they need to provide evidence that they have been financially impacted as a result of COVID-19, how to make the application work. And the reason we wanted to make sure that it went to landlords, because landlords too are feeling the pressure. We wanted to make sure that they knew that there was their tenant was making the application, that the money was coming, so that they could make plans accordingly, and it would help ease some of their pressures directly, so that they didn't have to wait for it to come to the tenant and then get to the landlord. So we're trying to balance these two components, and at the end of the day, that's the only way we're going to be able to get through this, is by working together and making sure that we're doing our best to meet the needs of people who call British Columbia home.
Next, we have Tanya Fletcher.
Oh, hi there. I'm just wondering if you can clarify, is this for each renter or each rental situation? For example, if there are 3 roommates sharing rent, is this for each of them can apply separately, or is this for the suite as a whole?
The actual implementation of the program is being worked out, and that's one of the considerations that we're looking at. How to best deliver there in that situation.
Next, we're going to Stephanie Ip.
Hi there. Just to clarify the rent freeze, it goes into effect April 1st. Is that for rent increases that were set to occur after April 1st, or notices of rent freeze after April 1st?
If your rent was set, if your rent was supposed to increase April 1st, it's not going to now.
And finally, we're going to end with Keith Baldry.
Tanya sort of stole my question, so I'll ask, on student loans, what is the process there? Is it the person who owes the money has to take the initiative, or have you sent an order to financial institutions?
With student loans?
Yeah, that's me. You want to push
Oh, yeah. I have the alcohol wipe.
Thanks, Selena. Keith, that's in the hands of the Minister of Finance. It was part, again, also of the critical services and support package that we announced on Monday, and so we're still working through that. Again, it depends on financial institutions. As you say, they're the ones that collect student loans. We've already waived, prior to the pandemic, we already waived interest on student loans. Now we're waiving for until September the payment of student loans entirely. And that will give immediate relief to people, and we're going to be working with financial institutions. I suspect that Carol will have more to say on that when she updates the broader plan. And again, there's more opportunities for discussion. Obviously, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will be out later today. Minister Farnworth and I will have some things to say tomorrow with respect to the Emergency Program Act. And again, these issues are evolving, but it's a very good question. It will ultimately fall to financial institutions to work with the Minister of Finance to figure out how we're going to go forward from here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. I find it ironic that you're the only one.